Today, we're diving into a journey that I think every single reader goes on. It's that moment when the pure magic of getting lost in a story kind of gives way to the work of taking it apart. So let me ask you this. Think back. You find a book, you absolutely fall in love with the world, the characters, and then you have to read it for class. And all of a sudden, it's not about the magic anymore, is it? It's about themes and motifs and character types. Well, this explainer is all about that tension. And it's inspired by a fascinating lecture from Thai literature professor Dr. Saharat Kidmahatcharan. So let's start at the beginning. Our story kicks off with Dr. Sarowitz's own childhood, way back in the 1980s. You know, a time before the internet, when books were pretty much everything. They weren't just entertainment. They were like these amazing portals to completely different worlds. Dr. Saharat's reading world was built in a way that feels almost ancient now. It all started in rental bookshops. His sister was a big fan of romance novels, but she pointed him toward the ghost comics instead. But his world really, truly opened up in libraries. Not just the public ones, but even one inside a local bank. For him, these places were the ultimate escape. And his bookshelf wasn't filled with some carefully curated list of classics. Nope. It was this chaotic, absolutely wonderful mix of ghost comics, over-the-top sensational novels, and he even picked up a famous Thai classic, Four Rains, because he thought it was a kung fu epic. I mean, you gotta love that. It was this accidental, totally random mix that sparked a lifelong passion. Dr. Saharat actually gives this feeling a name. He calls it reading old. And it's not about how old you are, it's about how you read. This is reading with your heart. You know the feeling, right? You're so deep in the story that you feel what the characters feel. You get mad at their bad decisions, and maybe you even skip to the end just to make sure everything turns out okay. We've all been there. But then, everything changed. He goes off to university to study the very thing he loves, literature. Only to find out that, well, the university looks at books in a totally different way. Yeah, the focus completely shifted from feeling the story to picking it apart. Suddenly, every single book became a text that had to deconstruct, like a puzzle you had to solve. The goal wasn't immersion anymore, it was critical distance. And this is where the questions themselves just changed. A kid's natural curiosity asks, why on earth did she do that? But the student's analysis asks, is this character round, complex and evolving, or flat, meaning they're simple and never change? And this new analytical way of looking at things, it came with a price. That ability to just sink into a story, to read old, it just started to fade. The joy he used to feel was replaced by this pressure to analyze. And for anyone who studied literature, this is a really, really familiar feeling. It's a kind of loss. So this sets up the big conflict in our story. Dr. Saharat calls this analytical approach reading new, and he frames the whole thing as this epic battle between the heart and the mind. So reading old, that's the heart. It's immersive, it's emotional, and you're always asking what happens next. You see stories as entire worlds. Then you have reading new. That's all mind. It's analytical, it's theoretical, and it asks, how does this actually work? It sees stories as texts to be taken apart. Now, to make this super clear, Dr. Saharat uses this powerful example from his own life, an acclaimed Thai novel called Rua Manut, which translates to human boat. And the result was jarring. As a boy, reading with his heart, he thought this novel was an absolute masterpiece. But when he came back to it as a professor, armed with all this critical theory, his opinion did a complete 180. The masterpiece now seemed kind of cheesy, melodramatic, and, as he put it, incredibly soapy. Same book, two completely different experiences. So, is that it? Are we just stuck? Do we have to choose between joy and analysis? Dr. Saharat argues absolutely not. The goal isn't to ditch one for the other, but to build a bridge between these two worlds, to create a reading experience that's richer and more complete. So how do you actually do that? The process is surprisingly simple, but really powerful. You start with a story you already love, that pure emotional connection from reading old. Then you apply a new tool from reading new, maybe a lens like feminist or post-colonial theory, and you just see what new hidden layers you can uncover. And this isn't just a theory. He's actually done this himself. He went back to classic Thai novels and re-examined them. He looked at behind the painting and started to question if the main character was really the gentleman everyone thought he was. He analyzed The Snake through a post-colonial lens and saw it as a story about longing for an authentic sense of Thai-ness. The old stories suddenly had this whole new life. Of course, the original authors weren't sitting around thinking about post-colonial theory. That's not the point. A new lens doesn't force a meaning onto the text that isn't there. It just helps you see the complexity that was there all along, hiding in plain sight. And this brings us to the real heart of his argument. We can't just toss out old literature as cheesy or outdated because we're excited about what's new. The past is the foundation for absolutely everything that comes after it. Think about it. New stories and new styles don't just appear out of thin air. They're always in a conversation with or pushing back against what came before. To get where literature is going, you have to understand where it's been. And Dr. Saharat himself says it perfectly. So what is the one big takeaway from all of this? It's the goal of a unified reading experience. One where that emotional joy of reading old isn't erased, but is actually made richer by the intellectual curiosity of reading new. It's about letting your heart and your mind finally read together. And that leaves us with a question for you. Think about the last book you really loved and the last one you had to analyze. How different were those experiences? The next time you pick up a book, how are you going to choose to read it? Will you let your heart and your mind read as one?